it's the gut and the insights with data that really have the impact.
Okay, welcome back to the Marketing Playbook presented by Details Interactive. Here you'll take away 3 game-winning marketing plays every episode to take back to your team. I'm your host, Mark Friedman, and my career has been focused on direct-to-consumer marketing, direct mail, physical retail, and digital commerce. This is episode number 44, and today's guest is Jamie Gutfreund, an accomplished marketer and strategic advisor. Before we get started, a quick thank you, as always, to Max Brandstetter of the Wild Business Growth Podcast for producing this episode. You can reach him at maxpodcasting.com to help bring your podcast to life. Let's open the playbook. Ready, break. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Marketing Playbook podcast. Today, I'm joined by Jamie Gutfreund. Jamie is an accomplished executive with significant experience applying data and insights to inform marketing strategies, product development, and digital transformation. Jamie's current activities include her role as a board member for Tubular Labs, the leading measurement and analytics solution for social video, and as a strategic advisor for programmatic video game advertising platform Anzu. Previously, she served as the Global Chief Marketing Officer for MGA Entertainment, the largest privately held toy company comprised of LOL Surprise and Little Tykes. Helping brands benefit from emerging technology has long been a passion for Jamie. A pioneer who quickly understood the internet's power as a marketing channel, Jamie helped launch Prodigy as the first internet-based online network. Jamie, welcome to the show.
Hello, Mark. Happy to be here.
Well, thanks very much for doing this. We're recording in the middle of September. We are hopefully moving through the pandemic. Different parts of the country, it's still problematic. How are you and your family doing?
We're great. Thank you for asking. September is also the beginning of football season. So it's a good time of year, no matter what's going on in the health situation. So lots of football watching these days.
Yeah, and I know we learned that you and I have a common team, the New York Giants. And although this is only audio, I made sure that while we were recording this, I went and got my Giants hat, one of the years when they were good, and shared it with Jamie.
They're always good. We can't be fair weather fans. This just tests our commitment.
This is testing my commitment, I have to admit.
And we still have more championships than the Patriots. That's all that matters.
That's good. Usually when we start the show, I'd like to get something, a little background, maybe something that you feel makes you a bit remarkable, something in your career that stands out.
Being so early in the quote unquote internet is something that really at the time I didn't understand was so unusual, but I had been fascinated with the internet and it was really wonky. This was before browsers. This was before it was very consumer friendly. And I had an opportunity at one point to go work for Kathy Kennedy. And she had just left Steven Spielberg and started Kennedy Marshall. And my job was to do a number of different things in marketing, but I also helped build websites. And as a result of that, I got somewhat savvy, but I was able to meet a lot of the early players in the digital space, including Prodigy, which at that time, and I'm totally dating myself, was before AOL. It was the biggest online network, but in those days it was a walled garden. We didn't call it that, but it was a walled garden. And I was part of the team that helped launch it onto the internet. Those were the days of 14.4 dial-up. It was fascinating. You still have those. Do you remember those cards? You were probably a child, but it was, you got 30 free hours. But no, it was a really wild, wild west kind of time in the world, especially in the digital space. And in LA, there was a lot of fascination and a lot of interest and enthusiasm for what content could look like, what the business models could be. And I feel really grateful that I was part of those early days.
That's interesting. So, I did have a question about Prodigy, so maybe I'll just jump to that one now. We sometimes take jobs because we know that they fit this grand plan that we have. They're stepping stones to other things. But since Prodigy was this new thing, about the internet, how did that, kind of play into your mindset? Did you take it because it just sounded cool, or did you really have some vision that, it was the beginning of this digital age?
I can't really say that I had vision or a grand plan. I just was fascinated and I wanted to learn as much as I possibly could. I did have a background in advertising and marketing at that point. So I had worked with a number of different brands and I wanted to learn more because it was such a new territory. I mean, there were no rules. There was nobody that knew any more than any of us. So I felt like it was an opportunity to really get in early. And if anything, it was opportunistic and fun. And in those days, I mean, this is the early 90s. It was so much fun because no one was really in it for the money. There was no money. It wasn't. So the people that were in it were like-minded travelers and, were very curious and were very entrepreneurial, as it turns out. So that there's no grand plan there.
And there was no money, I suppose, because there really was nothing to monetize at that point, right? People weren't, advertisers, users weren't coming to necessarily to Prodigy to say, we want to do something with you. And, how was Prodigy generating any revenue in those days?
Well, it was primarily subscription. You had a monthly, just
Ah,
remember I can't even remember what it was. And then they started to do some brand activations and we did do sponsorships with celebrity chats and those kind of things. But as part of that, I did also get to meet an enormous cross section of people in media and entertainment and whatever was technology at the time. And I was lucky and also met people from Microsoft. And Microsoft did have at the time for MSN a plan for how to monetize. And I was able to join that team. And in the beginning, it was about creating content and they had a channel structure, which was kind of fun. But I quickly realized that at Microsoft, if you were spending money, you were a lot more vulnerable. So I switched over to biz dev. And one of the areas, the things that was interesting early on was we did an upfront deal with Universal Pictures to do an advertising media deal and an upfront. And there's this brilliant woman named Anthony Price she was really a visionary. She's at Disney now, and she agreed to do this quite a significant deal. And I will tell you, I got an email from Bill Gates and my grandmother to this day, that was like the proudest moment of her life. Forget that I did anything. It was just that I had gotten an email from Bill Gates. But anyway, that's one of my war stories.
one of the threads throughout your career has been some really great brands. You talk about Prodigy, you talk about Microsoft. We'll talk about some of the others in a bit. How do you describe yourself? Are you a branding person? Are you a data person? Are you customer insights focused? Is it just this compendium of everything together?
That's an excellent question. I am a consumer person. I follow the consumers. I follow people. And usually it's younger people. And that's always been the thread. I want to know why. Why are you doing that? Why does that work? Why do you want to be associated with this brand or this project? But no matter what I do, whether I started in PR, it's really understanding the story and the motivation and the context of how customers, people are, buying things, how they entertain, whether they want to be entertained. And I always find that if you stick with the people part of it, the rest of it is a lot more understandable and accessible. If you watch and observe people and younger people, it's endlessly fascinating. You can never get bored or you can never be irrelevant.
We talked about the balance between branding and storytelling, and then there's the pretty picture component. But you've had a lot of data experience. How does somebody in the seats that you've had use the data and then allow that to kind of inform the decisions that you're making? It also has played to me that you've got all this data and then you still have to use your gut and your experience on how to interpret it.
There's an interesting formula. I did not make this up. I don't remember where I heard it, but I use it frequently, which is data, gut, data. So data can tell you how much someone's done something, when they did something. It's the gut and the insights with data that really have the impact, because there's a big difference between insights and observations. And I find it fascinating that gets confused. Like, knowing that a lot of families have Alexa in their home is an observation. Knowing that kids are able to make brand choices and decisions because they have access to Alexa is an insight. There's a big difference. So the data, I'm not a data scientist. I rely on the talents of my colleagues. So it's a symbiotic relationship. But understanding the story behind the data and really being able to translate that into something that has a business related outcome is the part that gets me so excited. And I think it's been a bit of a secret weapon throughout my entire career. And I really have been lucky that I've gotten to work with some really brilliant analytics experts and data scientists throughout my career.
You mentioned the younger consumer. I've seen some things that you've talked about with respect to Gen Z. So maybe describe a little bit, what Gen Z is, where they would be in their age, today perhaps, and how you think, marketing to them is best done.
Oh, this is one of my favorite topics, Mark. Thank you. Well, Gen Z, and look, there are no rules. There's no generational marketing rule book. It's not in the Library of Congress. But I would say loosely, Gen Z is under 30, post 9/11, to somewhere, I would say, early 20s, in that range right now. And they're the age that they grew up post 9/11, post 2008. The world was not easy for them in a different way than millennials. So I think if you kind of take a step back, you think, okay, boomers, they were the biggest generation and they had it. Boy, did they have it great. They just had it great. But when they had kids, those are the millennials, right? So it goes boomers, then Gen X. Gen X I'm a Gen X. And, we were the generation of, no seatbelts, no sunblock. You didn't have a play date. Gen X, I don't know where you fall on the spectrum, but people laugh when I say this, is like, when I graduated college, if I had to move home with my family after college, I would rather sleep on the street actually than move home with my parents. That was not happening. And then you've got millennials who are the children of boomers. You've got this giant generation. And then you've got Gen Z. So Gen Z is more analogous to Gen X. They're much more practical. They were not necessarily, this is not black and white, but they weren't necessarily given a trophy. They're very realistic, but they are the generation that prefers influencers over celebrities. They're the generation that's not passive. They are active creators. And I think that insight is the most powerful difference about who they are, because they know that they need to be financially robust. They don't expect anybody to take care of them financially. So they've been entrepreneurial to some degree from day one because they could, because of all the technology, because there's access. I mean, you hear all these stories now of I love these stories about kids that have Roblox games and then they're making couple $100,000 a month, or kids that are artists in their own right or musicians. They can sell their own clothes. You have so much access. So they're very entrepreneurial and very independent. Now, again, there is no black and white, but those are the influences for Gen Z. And they're in the workforce now. So you've got a multi-generational integration or battle of the generations going on in workplaces. And maybe that's one of the good things that COVID has done with remote work, is that you don't have the clash of generations in the workplace.
Let's go from Microsoft. Where did you head to after your stint at Microsoft?
I was really, again, no plan, got really lucky. Rich Barton was at Microsoft. He's the founder of Expedia. In those days, it was a CD-ROM, and it was He had this vision of building a travel marketplace, which sounds so simple, but remember, it was, early days back then. And I loved working with that team and had this insight and idea of going to Vegas and being able to start to do some business development in Vegas. I'm also like to gamble. So there was maybe perhaps a bit of a personal interest in there, but was fortunate and was able to build some relationships with some of the casinos early on. And for example, we did the first sweepstakes that the Mirage ever did as a way of getting email addresses. And I think we got about 25,000 email addresses. And we thought we were just the hottest thing going in town. It was fantastic. And, it required a lot of travel to Vegas, which in those days was, that was fantastic. But I did work with them quite a bit. And then Expedia was the only division to ever IPO out of Microsoft. And I was asked, luckily, thank God, to join. And you had to decide if you were going to join Expedia and leave Microsoft or stay at Microsoft. And so I joined Expedia and we did an IPO and went public in 99, I believe. And I stayed a short time after and then took a family hiatus. I stepped out of the workforce for a short time. I was a parked Ferrari, as my friends used to say. But I did get to work at Expedia and saw it blow up and really go on to be tremendous. And then Rich Barton also founded Zillow. He's incredible. And I may be telling tales, but he's so incredible. But his son was born on the day that we went public, and he couldn't ring the bell because he was in the hospital having his son. So I just remember that like it was yesterday.
Well, that's nice. He set his priorities appropriately.
He did. He did.
And you also then had a stint at Creative Artist Agency as the chief strategy officer. There's this, the Cassandra Report. Tell us about that. It was interesting as I was reading about it.
Yes. Well, it was founded by a brilliant entrepreneur, Jane Buckingham, recognized that, and this was early days of the internet, that big brands didn't really understand younger consumers and didn't really have access to what was going on. And so she founded the Cassandra Report and built a business around it. CAA acquired it, and I worked with Jane for a short time. And when she left the business, had an opportunity to join the business full-time and had an opportunity to work with a great team. And we built a consulting business that was based on research and insights and focused on young consumers. CAA also had a very successful marketing group, and we were partnered with them. We did different things, but I worked with proprietary research, quantitative and qualitative, and we were able to help brands not just look at the data, again, we're coming back to this theme of data, but understand where things were going and why, and anticipate shifts in behaviors. And it was like, for example, Victoria's Secret was one of our clients, and we were telling them, they listened to a lot of what we said, but we were telling them that women were shifting how they looked at the idea of sexy. And it took them maybe another 10 years to agree with us, but we were long gone by then. But I like to say we were early in the understanding that women were looking for things in a different way. And that was one example. We worked with Microsoft. We worked with Red Bull. We worked with an enormous amount of brands and helped them get closer to consumer behavior.
The idea behind that was so they would be able to pivot marketing, think about product creation and introduction and innovation for down the road. Was that really what you were trying to help them understand?
Yes. Well, if you're a brand, typically you're really good at whatever you're manufacturing, candy or sneakers or electronics or whatever your area is. And you need an outside source of cultural insights, what's going on with your consumer, what's going on in the world globally from many different sources. And we served as a opportunity for brands to really broaden their understanding of how people were living, to see opportunities. So Elle Magazine was a client, and they wanted to understand how to anticipate what was going on with the magazine business and where was fashion going. Red Bull was trying to, and this was before they had fully pivoted to being a content business. They wanted to understand where they could play in terms of younger consumers. Was it a sports drink? Was it a lifestyle brand? What were some of the opportunities they should be looking into? I think, again, it always goes back to this through line of consumer behavior. And if you watch consumer behavior, you can see the future. So one of the things that I always point out is for anybody that pays attention to kids playing games, it's not just that gaming is so compelling in terms of the entertainment factor, but it really changes the perspective and the expectations of what players think of in terms of interacting with brands. So for example, in gaming, everything's personalized, right? It's somewhat of a one-to-one experience. Again, this was AAA console games back in the day, but it was so much more interesting to play a game and have that user experience and the customer journey and the accessibility of being able to personalize things versus think about, to this day, how you sign up for healthcare or buy insurance or go to an ATM. And if you look at signing up for a bank account versus playing a video game, it's such a broad, terrible, it doesn't really stack up. And by understanding what was happening in those behaviors, because people don't think about younger kids as a target, especially if you're, a financial company or healthcare, but they grow up pretty quickly and you can't pivot your company as fast as you need to. So you really need to see how they're behaving and then apply it to your own business, travel. I mean, in those days, again, Amazon really changed the comparisons, because if you're a sneaker company, you're competing against other sneakers, or you're a fashion company, you're competing against other fashions. But when Amazon came in, one of the things that they really did was they changed the competitive landscape, because now everybody's competing against Amazon, and that customer experience and how easy it is to access what you want and when you want it. When you look at Amazon as an arbiter of how you buy things, it doesn't matter what category of brand you're in, you have to change your experience. And that was the kind of information that we were helping provide.
You've had so much experience in kids brands and in kids marketing. When I've always found it interesting, I watch these commercials and, I wonder, who is the advertiser really trying to market to? Are they advertising to the kid who's the end user of the product? Are they marketing to the adult, perhaps who's going to be the decision maker to buy? How do you think about that when you're in, working at, Little Tykes or a kid's business?
It changes, and it has changed significantly. The rule of thumb was always for brands to look for pester power. There's nothing more powerful than a kid's sitting in Frozen for 2 hours, walking out, and I got to have this product. That's just the way it goes. And that pester power, there's nothing more powerful than that. However, the world has shifted. The way families shop is changing drastically. Kids are involved, but you now increasingly have to market not only to kids, but to parents and to gift givers, aunts and uncles, and find a way to reach them in a really crowded marketplace. So it's a little bit of everything. And the media landscape has shifted so drastically in the last few years, where TV was such a powerful channel for a long time with every brand. But especially for kids now, it's a great awareness and reach play, but there's a challenge because the eyeballs are lessening, which means it's getting more expensive to buy traditional TV spots for less eyeballs. So you get too much frequency, and YouTube is taking over, TikTok is taking over YouTube, and gaming like Roblox is taking over all of it. So you have to be very nimble. And I think the idea of a franchise, the way it used to be, was the brand was at the center and it was all the different channels. If you pivot and look at it as the audience, the kid or the parents are in the center, and you think about which channel is the most effective, then you can start to figure out how to prioritize your budget, because you can't do everything for every brand all the time. You have to pick your spots. And as it's getting harder and harder to reach kids because it's so fragmented, you have to be really creative and nimble.
Do you have a direct-to-consumer business? I enjoy connecting with guests on this podcast because it reminds me what I love to do: strategic and tactical consulting for businesses like yours. If you'd like to speak with me about your business and see how you can add a fresh set of eyes to your team, contact me at mark@detailsinteractive.com. Now, let's get back to the marketing playbook. As the global CMO of Wonderman, what was that like? I mean, maybe for the folks that don't know Wonderman, tell us what that is, what that agency is, and tell us what your role was.
Wonderman, which is now called Wonderman Thompson, is part of WPP, and it was founded by Lester Wonderman way back in the 50s during the Mad Men era. And he was actually really brilliant, and he figured out the power of personalization and realized that if you got a letter addressed to Dear Homeowner versus if you got a letter addressed to Dear Mark, you're much more likely to open the Dear Mark note. And that opened up and unleashed this powerful channel of going direct to consumer and direct marketing. And he was brilliant at it. And the agency grew and grew and grew and became quite large, and was part of WPP. And Mark Reed had come in to run the business. There were about 7,000 people there at the time. And I was there for a few years. And by the time I left, we had merged, become Wonderman Thompson, merging with J. Walter Thompson. Brilliant creative agency, also, legacy and a heritage brand. But the focus for Wonderman had been CRM, technology, marketing automation. And Mark came in and wanted to build the brand to be a bit more current, a bit sexier. We should talk about sexy data and really turn the business around. So I was very fortunate to work with a great global team and help build the story, and the positioning became creatively driven, data inspired, which spoke to the power of having great creative plus data. It was a really great ride, and I got to work with some really incredible people. And I think that was where I was lucky, because I was able to trade my marketing skills in exchange for being able to learn about marketing automation and commerce and AI and cloud computing and everything else that I need, that a modern marketer needs to know.
Well, you must have read my mind, because my next question was going to be about AI. How are you interacting, with either companies from an advertising perspective or from companies that are actually developing AI tools to be able to, leverage that in your toolbox?
It is so powerful, but it's not replacing human creativity. The way I think about AI, and I learned a great deal about it. I'm going to little hat tip here to Stefan Pretorius, who's the Chief Technology Officer for WPP. He taught me an enormous amount, so I always like to give people credit. It's about eliminating rote tasks, things that are not worthy of a brilliant creative's time. So when you're looking at whether it's choosing the right imagery, photo, color, size of a piece of creative, figuring out at scale what works versus what works best versus what's not working at all because it doesn't have that same kind of traction. That's where AI comes in. And that was where I've spent my time trying to implement and leverage AI as a way of helping the teams do the smart work, not the manual labor that a machine can do.
I consult now. I, do mentoring for early stage companies. There's not a day goes by that there's not another AI based business that comes my way, trying to build a better mousetrap.
Well, you're a commerce expert. Where are you seeing AI come into play as a tool, as something that is not hype, that's there's real value?
Yeah, I think you hit it. I think it's, taking away the things that you don't really need the human, to do. In a lot of user generated content, or simply being able to use the information to communicate to a customer that's bought X that they should be buying Y on the same purchase. There've been tools like that forever, but now being able to take some additional information and different technology, the success rate of selling that add-on item, the upsell or the cross-sell, has improved dramatically with some of this technology. I think you see it also in customer service related things, the smart capabilities of interacting with chatbots. And, sometimes you can't even tell now. The responses are so good. You can't tell if it's a live agent that's responding to your question or whether it's, technology.
That's such a good point, the whole customer service, because it's not a profitable, it's expensive to have loads and loads of people. And while I'm not trying to eliminate jobs for people, for a lot of the requests, it does help the consumer have a better experience, and it doesn't cost the company that same kind of price to deliver a better experience, which is so critical and such an area people don't want to invest in sometimes.
Yeah, and I think we're all call it whether it's the Gen Zs or the millennials or whatever group we're talking about. Everybody wants everything quicker, right? Amazon thrust upon us. We want to order something and we want it almost immediately. Well, it's the same thing today. Either if you're buying something on a website, you don't want to send an email and wait 24 hours for somebody to respond to an email. You either want live chat or you want a bot to be able to answer your questions. I'm still amazed at retailers that, when you send an email, they give you an automated reply that says, we'll get back to you within 24 to 48 hours. But I want to buy now, right?
Exactly.
So I think customer service is one of those applications. You live out in LA, so there's lots of opportunity from a technology perspective. Where are you spending your time, these days, from an innovation perspective? You're working with a company as a board member called Tubular. You want to talk about that, perhaps?
Love to. Tubular, I've been a client of Tubular, a fan of Tubular, and a board member of Tubular for about 7 or 8 years. And what Tubular allows you to do is they ingest tons of social video across every channel and can help put it into a framework so that you can see what nobody else can see. So, for example, one of the things as an insight that they were able to identify a few years ago was the amount of video content, social video content that was happening on Twitch in the streaming space that was being produced by female gamers. And it was somewhat of an underlooked, overlooked, underserved audience. And so a really brilliant executive had this idea, oh my God, if there's this many women streaming on TikTok that are streaming games, well, women wear makeup. So they went to ELF, Eyes, Lips, Face, and they worked with them to help inspire this campaign that ELF went on to build and really take a leadership role and be one of the first non-endemic brands in gaming, especially for women. And so being able to understand those insights and know what's working is really powerful. And Tubular also helps a brand understand what their audience is watching. So let's just say you're a toy brand and you see that arts and crafts is really popular among your audience, and I'm talking about parents because you can't obviously look at kids. Arts and crafts is popular. You can see the DIY is popular and fashion's popular. Well, that could give you the inspiration to make smarter content creation decisions so that you're leveraging your budget wisely and you're building something that has a pre-built audience that's already engaged with these topics. So you could do a how to make your best outfit based on a doll fashion. Those kind of things are really powerful. For publishers, it allows people to really equate, well, you can buy this audience on this publisher, I won't say any names, versus an audience on this publisher, and this one actually has better composition of your audience. It's a really incredible tool. So I spend a lot of time there. I also spend a lot of time with Anzu, which is a programmatic marketplace in games, which has been something that has been discussed for many, many years. I think they've cracked it. because they're not building it so that it's an interruption. They're integrating it in a programmatic way so that it's easy for brands to buy the media, but it doesn't ruin the user experience, which is always critical with gamers. I'm also, you'll hear me talk about this, I'm literally obsessed with Roblox and the impact it's having on the marketing world. And I think, people are talking about the metaverse, which is somewhat of a misnomer, but I think gaming in this creative way, where it's not just shooters or role play, where it's more of a social creative community opportunity, whether that's Fortnite, Minecraft, Roblox, is such an eye-opening opportunity and really transforming marketing for every age. And I think it's incredible. It reminds me of the early days, just bringing it full circle. It reminds me of the early days of Prodigy and AOL and CompuServe.
You've had quite a lot of experience in marketing, lots of different great companies. And you'll appreciate this as we wind down our show. We do this 2-minute drill.
Yes.
I ask you a question, 1 or 2 word answers. There's 7 of them. All ready?
Yep, I'm ready to go.
Okay. A brand that you admire or that inspires you?
I'm a little obsessed with Telfar. It's a fashion brand. It is killing it in marketing. It just had a really successful show for New York Fashion Week, and they just launched Telfar TV. It's a very accessible, price-wise and premium brand, and their marketing is killer, and they really just get their audience.
Cool. I'll check that one out. The favorite app on your phone?
Roblox. Sorry.
I knew that was coming after you talked so glowingly about it.
I did.
The last website other than Amazon that you shopped from?
This is embarrassing, but I'm going to be brutally honest. I shopped on a site called Bev, BEV. It's a it's wine in cans, and I love it. I found it during COVID. It's a company owned by women, and I started, like everybody else, I started to like my glass of wine at night, but I would open a bottle and then feel compelled to drink more than I would like to. But I found Bev, which is sugar-free, great delivery, great brand, and I'm a little obsessed with that too. So a little Bev and a little Roblox. You can see how exciting my life is.
Something that you're not good at, but that you wish that you were?
Cooking. I really wish I could. I really, really wish I could cook more. So does my family, but I'm great with Postmates.
Okay. Charitable organization that you're passionate about?
There's a camp in Vermont called Keewaydin, and it's over 100 years old, and it's a summer camp that I like to call character camp, that has a big scholarship program, and it gets kids from everywhere out of the cities, and it really is a way that kids build character in the wilds of Vermont. No technology. It's a spectacular organization.
If you had one superpower, what would it be?
Breathing underwater. I don't know why. I've been obsessed with, I like to scuba dive, but I've been upset. I don't know. I think I want to be a mermaid. I don't know. Go feel. It's the thing.
Other than family, what's your most prized possession?
I happen to own or have a megaphone from when I was a cheerleader in high school, and I still have my megaphone, and I look at that and it's like my rosebud, I guess, in some ways. It just reminds me of a different time, and I happen to be so loud I don't really even need a megaphone, so it's kind of ironic in and of itself, but it's just stayed with me. I've had it for years, and it goes with me everywhere, and it's pretty iconic in my house.
That's a good story. As we wrap up here, oftentimes people want to reach out to the guests that are on the show. So where can people reach out to you on social media?
At Jamie Central on Twitter. I was very focused on Twitter for a long time, and now I'm back. So at Jamie Central. I would be honored if anyone wants to reach out to me, or LinkedIn, either one.
Okay, that's great. Jamie, really enjoyed this. You really, no kidding, have a tremendous set of experiences, lots of information, and the brands that you have worked with and helped to drive have been outstanding. So thank you for spending this time with me and with the audience, and wish you and the family good health.
Thank you, and go Giants.
Go Giants. That's
Go
right.
Giants. Go Big Blue. Thank you so much for your time, Mark. It's been great.
That's it. Today's game ball goes to Jamie Gutfreund for coming on the Marketing Playbook. To me, today's 3 game-winning marketing plays were as follows. Number 1, artificial intelligence should be eliminating the rote tasks that humans have been doing, but do not really need to spend the time on. It'll not eliminate the need for humans and their ability to be creative, but use it to make decisions at scale to grow your business. Number 2, what is pester power and how do you use it to your advantage? Jamie spoke about how marketing to kids is executed, and she described it as pester power, whereby the kids pester parents to get them something. Even if you're not marketing to kids, you need to find the right message and story to offer up to your consumer that'll resonate with them to purchase your product. And number 3, Jamie spoke about data, gut, data. You cannot always let the numbers drive your decisions. The data will tell you what your customers did, but you have to take that information, interpret what it's telling you, and then formulate a plan to use that data to execute your strategies. Thank you, Playbook marketers, for listening to another episode. If you want to check out more pages of the Marketing Playbook, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast spot and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You can also follow us on Twitter at DetailsInteract and learn more at detailsinteractive.com. Until next time, the devil is in the details.